When Pokemon Sword and Shield were released, I remember being so hyped for these games. I mean, this was the first new generation of Pokemon to be featured on the Switch, and after a long line of games being handheld, I was ready for a brand new adventure on the big screen. Though I'll always hold a special place in my heart for the older games. I even went to the midnight launch for the games here in New York City at the Nintendo store. I got lots of free merch, plushies of Sobble and Scorbunny, no Grookey unfortunately, sorry Grookey gang, and the double pack that had both games. I also went to this event knowing damn well that I had to be up bright and early the next day for work, but I didn't care. My main job of being a Pokemon master called, and I had to answer. All of this to say that I had a lot of excitement to play Sword and Shield and have a ton of fond memories of my first playthrough. My first experience with the wild area, seeing the new regional forms, falling in love with Piers and Raihan because literally how could you not? There was even DLC to keep the game fresh after some time, which I of course played with the Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra. And I wanted to make this video today just ranting about the things that I think that the game does actually really well and why I think that this game is severely underrated to some people. It was even underrated in a poll that I did on my community tab talking about which underrated Pokemon game I'm going to be talking about. To be fair, I also completely agree that X and Y and Sun and Moon both have a lot of underrated elements to them as well, so let me know if you'd like to see a video for those games too. Are these games better than you remember, or does Gen 8 actually deserve to be ranked lower? Let's spill all of the Sinisty on Pokemon Sword and Shield. After replaying this game again and with everything fresh in my mind, I want to go through all of the main talking points for this game and just discuss everything. For today's video, I have a whole bunch of pros and cons for Pokemon Sword and Shield, and I'm gonna let y'all be the judge. I'm just gonna go through all the talking points today, and I can't wait to hear down in the comment section below what all of you actually think about this game. Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Because I think that these games genuinely, after replaying it after all this time, are severely underrated, and they do deserve a lot of love that I feel like they don't always get all the time. If you are excited to be talking about Pokemon Sword and Shield Generation 8 in today's video, let me know down in the comment section below by telling me your favorite thing about these games, one of your fondest memories. I just really would love to hear anything positive for these games because I do think that they deserve it. But don't worry if Sword and Shield are not your favorites. I will also be talking the real talk today, and I will be going through some cons that I didn't love as well, but just not right now because we're talking about the pros. Pro number one that I absolutely have to talk about first, because I feel like this is one of the things that this game does the most successfully, and that is the scale of the battles in the stadiums for gym battles and the Pokemon League. This all felt so freaking incredible. I mean, as a massive fan of the anime ever since I was a kid, this was the first time in the games that I ever felt like the scale was there and it matched, and we had a whole stadium full of people cheering us on, screaming at our success, and I freaking loved it. I think there's so many elements that help make this work. The gym theme being incredible, you hear the fans screaming in the background, just the gimmick of Dynamax and Gigantamax Pokemon, like everything works, it's all cohesive, and it all makes it feel like this grand epic battle happening. And I love that they made the gym challenge, which is our main feature and main thing we're doing in a Pokemon game, just have so much higher stakes, and everything just felt a lot better. Piggybacking off of Dynamax Pokemon, let's go into the Dynamax raids, which I actually had a lot of fun doing throughout the game, and it's probably one of my favorite things to do in my spare time playing Pokemon Sword and Shield. I mean, if it tells you anything, I still enjoy going into the area of the Crown Tundra where you can go through the Dynamax battles and the Dynamax raid dens, going to find the legendaries at the end, especially for shiny hunting. I just have a lot of fun doing it, and I love doing the back-to-back battles. Do they always work the best? No, I do get that there's a couple flaws here and there with them, but I think overall I did have a lot of fun with them, and considering that I do still go back to do them, you can tell that I have a lot of fun playing them. But maybe that's just because I'm a shiny hunter and I do love the odds of finding a shiny at the end, and also the feeling is so cathartic at the end, going through all of that journey and finding a shiny legendary. I found a shiny Landorus recently using this method, and y'all, that feeling of having this particular screen come on and going through each of the Pokemon and one of them being shiny, the feeling cannot be matched. We of course also have to talk about the Galar region's Pokemon, because some of them are so freaking incredible and have become personal favorites of mine. I love Centiskorch and Dragapult, I love Cinderace and Corviknight. Like, there are so many great Pokemon that were introduced in this region, and that's not even mentioning the Galarian forms, which so many are successful. Galarian Slowpoke and Slowbro and Slowking are iconic. Galarian Ponyta and Rapidash are fabulous and glamorous and beautiful. We also get some new fun regional evolutions like Runerigus and Sirfetch'd, which I think are both awesome designs. So we've talked about some new things that you can do, but I just want to talk about the thing itself for a second. We need to acknowledge that this felt like a brand new jump and a new beginning of an era for Pokemon, and everything here felt so different. I mean, this was the first new entry on a brand new console like the Nintendo Switch and our first journey on the TV, and everything had to feel bigger and everything had to feel like a different kind of journey than ever before, and I definitely think that it did, and I think the wild area was one of those things that helped with that. Now, with the wild area, I do have a con that I will be talking about a bit later on that regards the wild area, but just talking about the positives for right now, I love the idea of this in kind of getting a little bit more towards the open world Pokemon game that everyone has always been wanting at this point, and kind of experimenting with, would this be possible, how would this work, and kind of giving it the good old college try. I really did appreciate Pokemon just for doing this and giving us such a massive, expansive area, that there's a bunch of different Pokemon all over the place, and especially that there were new Pokemon changing depending on the weather of whatever area of the wild area you were in. I just think for a first time ever getting to have something like this, it was a pretty fun one. I also felt like it connected the Galar region in a way that we haven't done before, because some other Pokemon games may feel a little bit linear, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I do think that this game strayed away from that a little bit with the wild area, and kind of broke up those more linear segments. I think this is a perfect time to talk about the Galar region as a whole. I think that the Galar region is overall super successful. There are so many iconic areas of this game that I just need to talk about. Like, I love the way that the cities and towns were shown and made in this game. I mean, so many come to mind immediately. I love Hulberry, I love Balanlea, I love Stow-on-Side. All of these places in my mind just being very well designed and kind of iconic in the way that I remember exactly what they look like, which I can't say that about every single Pokemon location I've ever been to. There are so many other places that I could talk about that I love so much, but those are just a few of the gorgeous and amazing places in the Galar region, and going through this region for the first time was really exciting because of how interesting all the towns and cities were. And let's not forget about the inspiration for the Galar region being the UK, and that definitely influences a lot of the area's references and all of the dialect being used by the characters that live there. I just think that it was all so smart, so well done, and also really fun as well, just seeing all of these UK themed references. Also, for those who actually live in the UK, let me know if you have unicorns, because if y'all are holding out on the unicorns, I need to come over and make a visit. Continuing on talking about the people of the Galar region, I would be amiss to not talk about the character designs of the Galar region. I mean, so many of these characters are incredible, and some of my favorites of the entire series, and probably of a lot of the modern Pokemon games, come from Sword and Shield. I think that Marnie is adorable, I think that Bede is iconic, I think that Opal is hilarious, I think that Leon is a great champion, and I'm absolutely in love with Raihan and Piers and Nessa, and so many of these characters are just so chef's kiss amazing. I still to this day distinctly remember my first playthrough ever playing through this game. I thought this was one of the most well done things about the entire game, was the designed characters. Like, everyone was so good and iconic, and I remembered all of them. It's the same thing as the towns and the cities. Like, if I remember you and what you look like and your team and your design, then you did a pretty good job, because there is a lot of Pokemon characters, and so of course you're gonna forget some every now and then, but the fact that I remember what pretty much all of the characters from Sword and Shield look like is a very good sign. But now that we're done talking about the people of the Galar region, we need to talk about the person of the Galar region. I mentioned him briefly, but we need to talk about our champion, the most popular trainer in all of the Galar region, our hero, Leon. Leon is an incredible champion. I know that not everybody thinks so, but I sure as hell do. I think that there's a lot to like about Leon, and I talked about this a bit in my champion video, that I was not always a fan of Leon. When I played the game for my first time, I thought that he was a little bit of a bragger. I was like, wow, he's so full of himself. He thinks that he's amazing. He thinks he's the best. He thinks he's unbeatable. I'm sick of hearing about it. But then the more I got used to it, the more I read into his character, the more dialogue I got, the longer time I spent with Leon, I started to understand what his symbolism actually means. He is a hero to the Galar region. He is a superhero to them. He is a celebrity in the minds of everyone of the region. And justifiably so, he is beloved for his amazing character. He has this iconic look behind him. He has this iconic team, and he is constantly going throughout the region, visiting its people, hyping them up, and also when they need to be taken care of, taking care of them. He constantly was battling these Gigantamax Pokemon to try and help the region when it was in its most dire time of need. He was fighting against Chairman Rose when he turned. He tried to fight against Eternatus. He is a fantastic brother to Hop and really genuinely cares for his brother and wants him to get better. This is a great freaking guy who really cares about his family, his fans, and his home region. Is he a bit of a Zoro in the sense of that he gets lost just going 2 steps from his front door? Yes, but that's one of his adorable qualities. I can absolutely understand if Leon is not your favorite champion, but you do have to acknowledge that Leon does have a lot of great things about him. And I think what makes him a great champion is what he means to the Galar region as a whole, which I feel like every champion should. I do want to lightly talk about Hop here. I do think there's a positive for Hop that I think a lot of people ignore just because he's not everyone's favorite rival, but I actually do enjoy the arc that Hop goes through throughout this game that some people may not even realize. I mean, this boy is going through so much self-doubt and wanting to just make his champion of a brother proud that he's constantly trying to improve himself and win and be better. He's even swapping his team around constantly because he thinks that he can't win with the Pokemon that he actually wants to use. His arc always just made me so sad, especially after the battle with Bede where he's just swapping his team around. Like, he actually is going through a lot if you read his dialogue and pay attention to what's going on with him, and I don't know, I think people don't give Hop enough credit. Is he my favorite Pokemon rival? No, I do love some other rivals more than him, but I definitely think that he's not one of the worst, and people need to lay off him a little bit. I mean, Hop ends up getting the other legendary in the end that we don't get in whatever game we choose, so he has to be a pretty good trainer. Speaking of the legendaries, let's talk about our box arts, Zacian and Zamazenta, which I think are really iconic legendaries. I do think that they're very well designed, and again, I think their lore and symbolism for what they mean for the Galar region and the whole story about the two brothers and the kings, I think that it's really cool. I actually really enjoyed learning about the lore of this region and the lore of the legendary dogs, and also they are really, really good in battle. Like, we need to talk about that, specifically in Generation 8. They do get a little bit of a nerf in Gen 9, but in Gen 8, these Pokemon are monsters. They are absolute fiends, and I think it always helps for a Pokemon game having your box art legendaries be good and likable, because if people don't like the Pokemon that's on the front of the cover, they're not going to want to play the game or they're not going to like it. So I think it's important to have those Pokemon be at least generally liked, and I think in my opinion Zacian and Zamazenta are way more than just a general like, at least for me. I like them a lot. We also got some other iconic legendary and mythical Pokemon in Gen 8. I mean, just look at Eternatus, especially Gigantamax Eternatus. We got Urshifu. We finally got new Regis after all this time with Regieleki and Regidrago, which I both think are super fun. And then there's Calyrex. He's fine. He's there. We like him in his rider form, but you can find Calyrex in the DLC for Sword and Shield, which is our last and final pro that I wanted to dive into for this video. I think that this DLC, for being the first ever DLC in a Pokemon series and game, was really, really well done and did exactly what I would hope a DLC would do for a game, and it just adds more on top of an already great thing. I'm not going to dive super far into this because I do plan on making a video talking about DLC versus post-game, specifically specifically in the Pokemon series, so I just want to say that I think that this was really, really well done, and I enjoyed playing the heck out of this. We were given extra storylines, new characters, new Pokemon to catch, just returning and new in general. We'll talk about it. I definitely think after thinking about it and replaying it that I prefer the Crown Tundra over the Isle of Armor, but I mean both of them are still very successful and fun to play. So all of those things combined to say that I believe Sword and Shield are great Pokemon games. But the time has come to discuss the cons. Not every game is perfect, and just because I have these opinions does not mean I feel any worse about the game as a whole. I really enjoy this game a lot, and I want to sell you this game in this video. So these cons are just me expressing the things that I do think need to be addressed, but it's really just a couple things here and there that I really don't feel like ruined my experience, but they were things that I still wanted to talk about. Let's start off with the big one. There is a lot of controversy about this game and what it looks like, and the gameplay, and the frame rate, and the graphics, and how this darn tree looks in the overworld. I will never shut up about this tree. I just think this is one of the silliest things that the Pokemon community has ever done, is focusing so hard on this one poor tree. I mean, look, this tree is providing us oxygen, y'all. Like, we are alive because of trees like this. We need to be a little bit more grateful. Okay, y'all, but real talk, I don't think that the graphics in this game are the ugliest thing in the world. I think that they do need to be mentioned, that it's not the prettiest sometimes. I definitely don't think that it's the best running Pokemon game, especially in the Dynamax raids. Then of course there was also the lack of a national dex, which I would say was the second thing that people hated the most about this game, in that there was just not a lot of Pokemon in the beginning, and you couldn't get all of them, especially because we had never really had something like this happen before. For some people this was a big issue. I mean, a lot of people out there love to transfer some of their old Pokemon into the newer generations and newer games, so not being able to do that was definitely a con for a lot of people, and I can understand why. I mean, some people grow personal attachments to their Pokemon and want to use them whenever they can, and so the fact that you weren't able to for some of them was not great. Granted, some of these Pokemon did get introduced later on through DLC, but I can understand why people would be upset with that as well. Why should you have to pay for certain Pokemon to be in the game when others are just there? I did say we were going to return to the wild area in the con section, and the reason why is I feel like even with as many Pokemon as there were to capture here and finding them was fun, the area itself can get a little bland. It was not the most visually appealing thing to run throughout. It was kind of just patches of grass with occasional trees here and there with occasional landmarks. Overall, it more felt like a Pokemon sandbox with Pokemon appearing sometimes instead of an actual like cool area to explore. But I mean, this really was the first time that Pokemon was ever experimenting with something like this, so I do give them a little bit of a pass just because it was their first time doing anything like this, but I do still want to mention it in the cons, and that I did feel this way at some points, and that it could have been a little more exciting. With every Pokemon being able to Dynamax and Gigantamax Pokemon being really so infrequent, you never really get to use them throughout the game, they just felt a little lackluster to me in terms of a gimmick, and especially with Gigantamax Pokemon really just getting a bit of an appearance change and then getting one special move. It wasn't my personal favorite gimmick in the world, and I absolutely would prefer something like Megas over Gigantamax Pokemon. I also felt like this game at times felt like there was a lack of a villain or antagonistic force until Chairman Rose's reveal at the end of the game. I am all for a surprise twist villain, as most of us are, I'm assuming. I think it's really great and fun to have a twist like that, and I think that Chairman Rose was actually a pretty good one, and I do like him as a villain. I just think that throughout the game, it just didn't feel like there was anything we were up against the whole time. So the stakes were a little low in that regard. And then there's Swordward and Shieldbert. Yeah. I don't need to say anything else. You know why they're here. But there you have it. There is all of my opinions, the good and the bad, the pros and the cons for Pokemon Sword and Shield. But y'all, after everything being said, I firmly believe that these games are good, and I would even say underrated to some, and I think that you absolutely should play them. If you are a Pokemon fan who has not picked up Pokemon Sword and Shield, I think now is your time to do so. These games are just a good time. I mean, if you play this game, you are getting into a beautiful region with a fun gimmick and lots of cool, new, great design Pokemon and regional forms that I think you will enjoy. Let me know down in the comment section below what you love about Pokemon Sword and Shield the most and what you think is the best thing about this game and Generation 8 as a whole. Y'all know I love hearing from you and all your Pokemon opinions. Also, while you're down there, you should hit the subscribe button because I have been having so much fun in these videos lately and seeing all of y'all's opinions and just hearing about it and creating a fun little gamer community together. Y'all are fabulous and beautiful, and don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. But as always, thank y'all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I enjoyed making it, and I hope to see y'all in the next one. Oh, I totally just realized I never talked about my diva Sonia. I'm sure no one will get upset about that.